if we think that our employee satisfaction, our human satisfaction is going to get better by having people type things into systems, I think we have a problem as leaders. I think we do.
Mike Fitzgerald, lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. How are you today in sunny London?
Doing really well. Thanks, Gareth. Thanks for inviting me. Very happy to be here.
Brilliant. Well, look, we've been busting to get someone on who's trying to scale an AI company at the moment for various reasons. There's so much going on. I did an interview recently with a couple of interviews with executives at the GCP AI Summit in London. Some of the stuff you guys are doing looks really interesting in that space. So I can't wait to dive in. But before we get going, I wanted to start with a question we always ask our guests to kick off, which is, what does good leadership mean to you, Mike?
It's an interesting one, actually. I've been very lucky throughout my career to have good leaders, let's say. I think I've been blessed with being around what I think has been very good leaders to maybe help me shape what I've become today and what my leadership style is. I think you're always trying to improve that. But for me, I think number one is kind of guidance first, guidance and coaching first, because we have this ethos and I have this ethos that I think if you think about, you want to bring someone into your organization that can help you do something that you can't. So if you bring in a very specialist skill set or someone that's an expert somewhere, then you really shouldn't be telling them what to do in their field, right? So guiding them to be successful and building the right environment for them to use their skills, their knowledge and their experience best. And then I think the coaching piece is helping them take that to the next level. So how can they be impactful? And then building on that is building the right environment and the right organization culture, the right performance culture for people to be successful. So for me, throughout my career, I always thought I was good at something specifically, and maybe sometimes it was technical, and now it becomes a little bit more of a kind of broad management subject. People have always been able to provide me with the right environment and coaching, and definitely communication and feedback that allows you to operate at your best skill set, let's say. And I think for me, I was very lucky to be around those people. I try and replicate those things and learn from those things. But I think if you really want to be a great leader, I'm not proclaiming that I am yet. I think you've also got to be learning and listening, and that's the style and the side of the good communication as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a great answer. I think you covered a lot there. I mean, have you ever had a mentor or anything like that, Mike?
Yeah, early in my career, I had a couple of quite senior mentors that really helped me think a bit differently about what I might do with my career. And then as I've gone on throughout the career, I've actually had some incredible management coaches. I'm going to say that they weren't my choice. They were always maybe implemented as good guidance and good coaching from my good leaders, said you could do with some help in these areas. And that's been very good. I had two very, very good leadership coaches in the US over the last 10 years that have been really, I think, taken my leadership style and capabilities to a level I didn't think I would ever get to.
Could you give us a little bit of a high level overview of your background, why you sort of went into the technology software world to start with, and a little bit about the sort of journey you've been on ever since, right up until forming Senttr back in, is it the early 2023?
Give you a bit of personal background probably helps. So from an Irish family, originally grew up in Ireland. My mum was from the north of England, from Newcastle. So we ended up moving up north and up to north of the UK, that's where I went to school. It's where I learned to play football. It's where I have my largest group of friends, I'd say, the closest group of friends. And then I also did a lot of boxing. And I always thought that I would either end up in one of those two things. Did a lot of kind of amateur boxing, really enjoyed it.
Oh wow, I love boxing, by the way. I'm a big fan.
That was really where I wanted to be, and I enjoyed it so much. Although I had part-time jobs, I went to a local sixth form college, and I'm not the academic side. It never really drove me, and I really struggled to see success in it. But I think boxing and training in football, it taught me discipline. And it taught me hard work. And actually, I put down, when we talked about leadership coaching, I put down my original boxing trainer as probably one of the best leadership coaches I ever had, that taught me hard work and discipline and controlling your emotions and things like that as you grow up. And then that didn't work out for many reasons. And so I went back to night college, and I did a placement time locally in my local town doing what was called an MVQ in installing supporting IT systems at the time. I learned to code. So I had two jobs. I had one during the day at a local college supporting IT. I'd go to college one day a week, and then on a night time, I'd do some IT work. Basically, I'd take whatever contracts I could get. And very quickly, then I started to build a career in kind of solutions architecture and software. And I built small kind of software packages for small companies, and that became bigger. I worked in local governments and councils. And the opportunities would start when you were looking for contracts. Contracts was the way to go. It would pay a little bit better, and you could get a lot of experience in a short period of time.
Absolutely.
So I ended up taking contracts a little further afield. So I'd drive an hour maybe from where I was in Durham. I could drive then to Leeds, an hour and a half. And then eventually I'd be driving into the Midlands. And a good contract came up in London. I always wanted to kind of try to live the kind of corporate life and the better jobs and the better opportunities. So I moved to the city in my early 20s, and I met a gentleman, a good friend of mine still, Ian, and his friend Tracy, and we decided, let's go and build a tech company. They were very, very experienced in healthcare, and I'd been helping with them with some projects in healthcare. And we decided to start our first tech company, Innovate. I think I was in my mid-20s at the time.
Yeah.
We built a very good company. We were kind of nationally renowned. We won some international awards. First time I traveled to the US, I had to fly to the US for a few award ceremonies and conferences, and I was really enjoying being part of that. But I was still immature, and I didn't really understand business or management culture. I didn't really understand how to scale an organization, but we did very well. And I left there after 4 years, and I went off and I worked with a friend of mine in the industry who was the CEO of a very large managed service and tech company based out of Switzerland. And there were a few thousand employees. I'd never worked anywhere that kind of size or scale or experience. And so they wanted someone that could help them move from kind of reselling to services and solutions. And so very quickly, I had a corporate job leading large teams, and I had to grow up very quickly. But after being somewhere for 7 years, the kind of entrepreneurial itch started to come to me again. And as much as I love a challenge and building tech and building things, and there was always, at that job, there was always something to do, always something to build. I'd been building a marketplace there, and I was very interested in AI machine learning. I saw how it could make a big difference to us, but I didn't think I could take it in a big company at the speed that I needed to. So I took some time off. I had a little bit of a rest for 6 to 8 months. And then I actually met up with some ex-colleagues from that company, and we said, we've always wanted to do something together, maybe we should. So just late in 2023, we decided we'll formulate the idea that became Senttr over time. We initially got it wrong, and that's what most people will say, oh, we pivoted from one idea to another. No, we got it wrong, and then we edited it till we got it right. And then about 18 months ago, we commercially launched what was originally called AI Senttr, now called Senttr. And we can talk a little bit about why that changed. And now we've been successfully scaling Senttr for 18 months, and we're now at a point where we've got customers in 6 countries, where we've got a growing team based out of London and the UK. I believe we are the leader in what we do, and now what we call a digital worker segment. So it's been an excellent time of building and joining friends and doing something fun. But one of the best things about doing things with Senttr is probably the stuff that we get to do with customers as well. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of my career, but really I've spent most of my time in kind of solutions architecture through to product management, and then leadership in technology over time.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great intro. So what I wanted to ask you about is, you've worked obviously across vendors, resellers, services, businesses. You've been a CTO, entrepreneur. Looking back in terms of what you've achieved up until now, what experiences or companies or industries that you've worked in have had the biggest influence on how you are building Senttr today?
Yeah, it's something that we try and revisit a lot. Like, I have this concept that actually a leadership coach taught me about. My team get bored of me saying this, but I call it revert to manual or return to manual. So we usually write down the principles of the things we're trying to achieve, and then always go back to that and say, are we achieving them? Are we achieving them? So one of the things that we set out to do was try and solve some of the problems that we had when we were trying to use AI to solve business problems. And the same principles apply. So the first one is, in most technology solutions that are launched to industry today, the customer is not the first thing that everyone thinks about. It's usually the return on investment, how much money can we make, how much impact can it have? But people are not thinking about the ease of deployment, how easy it is to understand, the cost of consumption. And so fundamentally for us, customer first is a very, very important thing. And so even down to our pricing model, We want it to be predictable, simple, easy to manage from a customer's perspective. And I think if I'm going back to your question, the biggest impact for me, and still continues to be the biggest impact for me, is get in front of the customer, spend time with the customer, understand the business, and then create the solution, or then edit the solution to fit. And there's too much of our industry spends time on probably overcomplicating solutions that creates a false economy for the customer. Right.
Yeah,
I
I
talk
understand
about
exactly what you mean.
we've got this whole economy in our business segment of licensing, of software licensing. And software licensing has never been simple for the customer. It's one of the most difficult things for customers to understand. And there's almost this economy, an industry we created just to understand software licensing. Well, actually, all as the customer wants to do is consume some technology that makes a business impact for themselves and potentially their customers and their people, right? And
Yeah.
that's really the thing that, for me, we are responsible for in our industry, is solving that conundrum. Let's get in front of the customer. Let's make it easy for them to consume things. Let's make it easy for them to have an impact. And that's the value stack that I think that you've got to be driving.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give me an example in terms of software licensing then of how you would help businesses manage their estate from a
Yeah,
commercial licensing standpoint?
yeah, I think when I go back to I was, like I said, I was at a very large service provider reseller, and one of our services was, we will look at your estate and help you keep control of that spend and make sure you're not overspending, underspending, etc. When we look at that, when I was designing the pricing model for the platform, I say I actually, when we were as a team, one of the things we said is we want it to fundamentally be self-sufficient as a model. So let's take common AI tools that exist out there, and we don't have to list them, but we're all using at least one, I think, now, especially in the industry that we're in. You basically pay a fee to use the platform. At some point, that platform will probably send you a message in the app, and it will say you've run out of credits. So you've now got to build some credits. And then you start testing those type of things, and you say, okay, this is great, but I'm spending, I don't know, $100 a month, and now I've been spending $160, $170 a month on credits to get this thing to work. What I want to do is I want to roll this out to my business now, because I can see it as an impact for me. I want to roll it out to 100 users from small to medium sized business. What you then need to do is work out, is it $260 per user? What's the variable low rate cost, high rate cost? And then, okay, when I put that out there, what else do I need? So I need some infrastructure for it to sit on. I need some security wrap around it. I need a management cost to make sure it's rolled out properly. I need to make sure that people are using it, otherwise I turn it off. And then there's a whole set of services in the industry defined from very good service providers, I did work at one, that can help you manage that. But that economy is being created by technology companies creating a licensing and business model that actually, for me, shouldn't exist for the customer. Because if you can't predict how much something costs, I'm pretty sure you probably won't consume it in most cases. And in other industries, mature industries, let's take the motor industry to keep it super simple. If you're going to go and buy a car, there's 1,000 calculators out there in the car wows and similar. You can work out how much you want to spend per month, how many miles per gallon it does, or the electric range, and how much the consumption of the electric range is. You can work out how much that is, plus the fixed and variable cost as an estimate. You can't even really do that sensibly in AI technologies today. So that was one of the things I wanted to solve when we were building Senttr, was make it predictable, make it easy, and then somebody can build a very quick business case on top of it. Will it have an impact? To have an impact, basically.
Looking back across your career, you said obviously being led by the customer, which is absolutely right. You generally seem to build businesses around emerging technologies or around problems that you felt are not being solved properly. Is that generally what you've done with all of the businesses you've tried to create? Is that fair to say, Mike?
Yeah, I think I think it's exactly right, Gareth. To answer your question, just to give some context, I think I kind of grew up into this industry as a solutions architect, and so you're a consultant, and your job is, here's my problem, or help me find my problem, and then help me find a solution. So being a kind of solution oriented mindset by design, and also by solution sales, right? Because that's how you build a business on that. That's fundamentally what's happened. If I saw something that maybe I couldn't find an off-the-shelf solution for, I think we could build a good entrepreneurial business around that. And that's really what we did. And they were probably problems I thought I just had uniquely in my own vacuum in my last business, or in the business that I represented. And now in the future, what I've realized is, spending more time with customers, these are common, repeatable, everyday problems that most businesses have as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So coming on to Senttr then, I noticed you describe it as a digital worker platform rather than an AI agent platform. What is the distinction then? Can you maybe just talk us through the problem you're trying to solve and what makes you guys, your platform, unique and of value to business owners or business leaders?
Yeah. If we go back to that customer problem or conundrum and then take it forward to how let's say AI platforms and agentic platforms, and what we're seeing now is a kind of probably a generation of agentic platform, which is agentic workflow platforms, and then what I think is the kind of digital worker platform. So there's this concept of you can use AI to do tasks for you. You drive it, it does tasks. In a lot of cases, that's what we've been doing with most of the AI, the kind of common LLM based or model based AI clients, and they're very good. I use them every day. I'm sure you use them also. Right? If you need to create something quickly or moderate something quickly, take some notes, look at transcriptions of
Absolutely.
calls, they're fantastic. And then there is versions of those now that allow you to do this kind of agentic workflow, right? So you can basically build out common tasks, and each agent might take care of that task, and you could join them together into workflow to chain those tasks into kind of a common business workflow. What we see as let's say, a development beyond that, and as a future beyond that, is digital workers. And digital workers are a combination of, let's say, AI agents of workflows with some common thinking around a particular business problem and some learning and training around a business problem. I'll take a simple one just to explain it. So if I have an invoice management or an invoice processing digital worker, I want to be able to trust it as a member of my team to process my invoices. It knows what invoices look like. It knows how to process them in my systems. It knows where to find them. And it knows the commonality and the business rules around how I process invoices. So the idea is very quickly you can use an invoice management digital worker to process your invoices. And what the idea of the digital worker is, take out common, repeatable kind of grunt work or back office core business type tasks that most people, I'm not going to say humans because I hate that we use this new term inside of our industry, but people do not like data entry and execution in systems. And we have multiple systems that are disconnected. And what we say, we'll create APIs, workflows, and other things, and fundamentally they're unreliable because they're not specifically designed for that task. A digital worker that's designed for invoice management that has seen 1 million invoices tends to know what the invoice structure looks like, even if it's written on the back of a napkin, right? And so fundamentally, what we've built is a platform that has pre-built digital workers. So you can say an invoice management is one of them. I use that as an example. And then you can also build your own. So you can basically join the dots very quickly, build your own worker that covers your task. Let's say, Gareth, you want to create a lead management one. So every time a lead comes into your system, you want to take it, put it in CRM, and assign it to someone. And then you want to report on what's happening with that lead. You can build your own lead management worker. And the idea is you can do it without being a technologist. So in our platform, you don't need to be tech savvy. You do need to understand your own systems. So if you're a salesperson, you should know how to log into CRM. If you're a finance person, you should know how to log into your finance system or your ERP. But fundamentally, what's happening, I believe, in this industry with digital workers is they will become actual parts of teams driven by the team, the person, the human worker. They will be controlled by the human worker, but they will take over those grunt work tasks and allow us to scale businesses in a much more linear fashion, in a much more simple fashion, in a reliable way, fundamentally.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really like I've tried to create agentic workflows. I've created one which posts for me on Twitter every now and again, and that wasn't too bad. But I've tried to create them for other purposes, and it is quite painful. I used make.com, and I've looked at N8N. Is it that one as well? I'm not technical, so I just use a YouTube walkthrough to create it, but it is still a lot of work involved at the moment. There's not many platforms that enable you to create agentic workflows through natural language prompts. Is that sort of part? Obviously, I know this is for the purpose of operational work and finance and back office and stuff like that, but is that what you essentially, the problem you're trying to solve? You enable people, non-technical people, businesses to create like workflows that are going to deliver grunt work. I noticed your slogan, grunt work sorted, which I thought was great, by the way. That appeals to me a lot.
Yes. So I'll go back to kind of your explanation. So the very powerful tools like N8N and Make.com, they're actually excellent. and they're excellent at specific things. If you're a technologist, maybe like I have some technology skills. I'm not as deep technically as I used to be. And I will definitely run out of skills when it comes to those two platforms. There'll be parts I would have to ask some of my friends, technical friends or technical colleagues, to be able to help me with. And that's the idea: is if I'm running accounts payable, accounts receivable at a medium-sized company in the UK, it's likely I've got so many invoices on my desk or inbox, or my team has, that I do not have time to go YouTube. And it's not the initial setup that's the problem. It's the maintenance and reliability of that, because you're building your own models and you're pointing at your own things. You're not sure about data privacy. You can't cover the security. And in most cases, your IT team won't let you do it anyway, right? So if I can go to a pre-built platform and I know this thing is reliable and it's built specifically for the purpose, I can consume it. I know exactly how much it's going to cost to do the work. I can go do that and set it up. And that's exactly what we set Senttr up to do. And we have two ways you can do it. So you can basically go on our platform and choose from a template. Let's say we choose the invoice management template. It'll just say, Gareth, where do your invoices come in? They come in email. Okay. And what's your ERP system or finance system? I'm going to choose QuickBooks. Okay. Log in at QuickBooks. Okay. We're now going to process some invoices for you. When they're processed, where do you want them to go? Send me a Teams message, please. Just let me know to approve them, and I'll approve them and then put them in the system, please. And you'll get 4 prompts and you're ready to go. Or if you don't know what you're looking for, it's actually coming to the platform in the next few weeks. You can actually type in and say, I need something to process my invoices, please. And it'll take you through that workflow in the same way. And the idea is, we want to solve the small to medium business conundrum of scalability. That's something I've been challenged with myself over the years. So building small and medium businesses is very, very hard because of that technology conundrum. You're trying to learn everything at the same time. You're trying to learn bookkeeping. You're trying to keep your eyes on operating your business. You're trying to learn technology. I'm not so sure the majority of us have enough time to go and watch 8 hours of N8N videos and sign up and all the things that go around the outside
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, of course. And that is very appealing, what you've described there. And I think that is definitely the future, isn't it? In terms of that human versus digital worker conversation, then, do you ever have to say to customers that a human should stay firmly in control of that? Or when do you think it makes sense to give work to a digital worker, and when should a human stay in control?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. So I talked a little bit about, we designed the platform that it's used by the user that usually controls that function. So the finance process will be very familiar for invoice management to a finance person, that they would be very capable of setting up the finance worker. I would say maybe the lead gen agent or the lead gen worker would be much harder for the someone in finance to set up, because they're not familiar with the systems and the processes. By design, the platform and the workers are built to be able to be understood by the owner, particularly in that part of the business. And then if you look kind of on top of that, is we've even changed some of our vernacular in the platform, right? So most of the platforms in the industry call the kind of human process, they call it human in the loop. We call it human approval or human in control, right? So it starts with the human, ends with the human, fundamentally. The idea is that you need to be in control of these platforms if the digital worker works for you. The idea is it helps you scale your team, not it replaces your team over time. Because we're not, and that's our focus of grunt work, is it's impactful of the things that we don't like doing. I haven't met anyone yet, and I'm sure there's someone out there that does, but I haven't met anyone yet that likes typing in invoices into a ERP system, right? It's not a fun task. It's prone to error. It's repeatable. And in most cases, when a lot of people we meet from finance see that process, they cannot wait to automate it, even if that's taking a significant amount of their role away so they can go focus on something else.
Exactly. And that's definitely the situation with myself. And yeah, that makes total sense. So I wanted to talk to you about governance and managing AI at scale then. So this obviously deploying hundreds, perhaps thousands of AI agents over the coming years. What new governance challenges do you think companies are going to face, and what should they do about that in terms of making sure that these agents are doing things in the interest of the company?
There's probably a range of things that are happening in our industry right now. Right at the top level, including ourselves, there's the software vendors that are now having to look at new legislation and governance associated with deploying AI technologies and their ability to be able to do things with company data, for example, personally identifiable data, as well as just make sensible business decisions. So this is something that we wanted to do as part of being customer focused, was we wanted to be very particular about making sure our platform was private. We have things like data encryption in place, and it's controlled by the administrator or the human that's responsible for that worker. So we saw it initially as building workers that would live in your team. You would be a leader, and we talked about leadership earlier. You're going to lead the digital worker. You're going to give it governance and guidance. You're going to control. And we built in things like auditability and accountability into the platform to be able to do that. What's going to happen from a customer perspective is making sure they choose a platform where those controls are in place, but also add some other levels of controls around the rest of the organization. So we're all using, I've said about this, and we all talk about this. We used to have this IT conundrum 10 or 15 years ago. We talked about shadow IT that just blew up. Shadow IT is the new IT, in my opinion, right? Because if you stop your users from being productive using tools, let's say like a Claude or an OpenAI, you might actually slow them down today. But you still have to be responsible for what company data is going in outside my organization. Are my users well trained, or at least understand the threats of using AI for certain things? Can they potentially connect it to systems and data that are important to our organization that they shouldn't be connected to? So IT departments have another layer of governance and another layer of controls that they now need to implement, but without throttling the productivity of our end users. We must say that I've always been talking about this, about you wouldn't implement something on your own laptop that would stop you from working. So if you work in IT, you should not implement that on any of your users' laptop that should stop them from working or being productive either. Of course, you need to protect the organization and its assets, but you need to be able to understand that the more productive you can make your users, the better it will be for your business, and that will make you a better IT person, right? And that's a very important thing. And so user experience is the king of end user computing, a part of the industry I used to work in. Governance in end user computing for AI tools is probably one of the most difficult areas to play right now. And then over and above that, we've got the last one I'd say is the security conundrum. And AI tools and actually AI threats in the security conundrum is a whole nother attack surface area, another playing field that IT now have to manage and organizations have to manage. And the more like this proliferation of AI tools that we see come into our daily lives, it will bring more threats. It will bring a bigger attack surface area, and IT will have to move very fast. And there's a whole new set of service providers out there in the industry that are helping customers close these gaps as well.
Yeah, it's almost like there's going to be less doing and more safeguarding. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
I think
agree.
that is,
Yeah.
and we obviously, I know the term you've mentioned shadow IT, which is something we talk about a lot, just shadow AI, because departments are going to start building their own agents and automations without central oversight and things like that. This stuff is kind of inevitable, isn't it? So I think it's down to the central IT team to ensure that the guardrails are in place. This is a big, important part of enterprise, especially enterprise AI adoption, Mike, isn't it? Is just having those safeguards in place, those guardrails in place. So I wanted to pivot onto cost control then. So we talked about AI inevitably promises efficiency and enables people to focus on higher quality problems, but it also introduces new licenses, new infrastructure. Do you think organizations are paying enough attention to the cost management side of enterprise AI right now?
I actually don't. No, I think for the last probably 12 months, has been one of probably the dominating conversations when we're talking about Senttr with customers is, well, I already have a broad enterprise type agreement that might include some AI tool. And I think we always should be doing this, right? So what's become FinOps and AI Ops kind of attached to FinOps now, as we think about how should we be measuring our investments in IT? Well, we measure it on usage and impact, right? That's fundamentally what impact is this software tool having on my organization's growth, development, and efficiency. And the same should be said for AI. And I think we have not, as a customer group, and I put my own team in that as well, we have not got a handhold on the cost impact of AI and its productivity outcome. There's a really interesting article I was reading this week about the spend of Meta on AI tooling and AI credits for development. I think it was some crazy number, 250 million per month they were spending on AI credits just in development. And then there was another article this week that an internal memo, and you obviously have to be careful about what you read about these things and how much has actually made its way into the real world. That's true, but a memo went out that maybe the impact that they thought AI would have in their organization when they were making redundancies last year, I think 10,000 or so redundancies, is actually not realized itself. And actually, they're going to start putting people back into those roles and reduce the spend on AI to not very large spend on AI. I think that productivity conundrum, if it's hard for a technology first, innovation first organization like Meta, then I think we all have to be very aware that if we're not measuring our spend on AI tooling, whether it be shadow spend, not on the company credit card, personal credit card through expenses, or actually going out of kind of bundled into agreements and similar, if we're not measuring productivity gain versus spend there's probably a huge opportunity to be more agile or focus on the productivity. Right? Let's make sure we've already bought the asset to make sure we're sweating it properly and using it. And it's one of the things I probably talk about every day to customers, specifically in those customers that say, oh, we already have an AI tool, but we're struggling to get the value from it. And that tends to be the message that I get a lot is, we've been trying for months to try and get value from these things, but we can't get it to stick. A little bit like your reference earlier, Gareth, where you said you can do some things, but really getting enterprise level value is quite hard from the tools.
Yeah. I think it nonetheless is making progress very quickly, isn't it? And I think what I'm sort of fascinated by is today's organizations manage obviously software licenses, cloud infrastructure, IT assets. In 5-10 years' time, do you think companies will be obviously managing as well inventories of AI agents, digital workers, models, autonomous workflows? What do you think the trends in terms of the AI estate of the future actually look like, Mike? What are the main differences between now and in 5 years' time, do you think, with all this innovation sort of changing so many things?
Yeah, there's two. So I'll take it in two sides. I think we will be measuring costs of the impact of AI as another kind of line item on our software spend, and it will be almost like I talk about this a lot. That I see the pricing models changing, which is why we started where we started. I'm sure I'm not being rude. I say we can definitely remember when we used to have a mobile phone or a cell phone bill, and the data was not bundled, right? So you'd go away to France for a weekend if you could do that, and you'd come back and you had this huge bill, and you would never understand why, right? And these days it's capped, and there's a whole legislation around capping it because those bundled amounts of minutes or data that we get with our service provider,
Yeah,
it had to happen for it to be a predictable, actually productive outcome for us to be able to use devices
of
and
course.
roaming. And I think the same thing will come from a cost perspective. I think either legislation will come that will stop this token based blind spending scenario that we have today. We hope that we are predicting and being ahead of that by fixing it out of the box. And then the other side of that, I think, is there's two kind of thoughts on this, and I've read some really good articles from some very good technologists from Amazon and Microsoft that have written about this well. But one is that we'll see AI agents like we saw virtual machines when we moved from physical servers to virtual servers and then into let's say containers and applications in the cloud. We'll measure agents like that. We'll have some kind of infrastructure that manages agents, and we'll be able to control how many there is and how we govern them and secure them. And I think that's well underway in our industry already. And then the second part of that is workers that are built from those agents, we will manage like we manage the team of people that we've got today. How much are we spending? What's the productive outcome? So if I'm sure other people use these similar terms, but you might have your PEX, your personal expenditure, and then your productivity on personal expenditure. So you might say it's kind of a classic measurement of how salespeople work. How much are we spending personal expenditure? How much return on investment do we make? And there's sometimes even a value stack. You might say we want at least 3x PEX for each salesperson that's in our organization. You will treat digital workers like that. What's the productivity outcome that we're getting for the spend we're getting per worker? And you won't just treat them like that as they're just a blind worker. You'll see how they fit into your organizational org chart and structure and how you manage the outputs of your business based on the investments you're making in the digital workers and actually your people as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good answer. That's a really comprehensive answer. I think that I really liked your analogy about the shift in terms of the way mobile phone contracts are structured, or they're based on. They used to be based on minutes. They're based on data. It's just an evolution of the pricing model catching up with the technology. I think we're in that transition curve right now, aren't we, with IT licensing? So let's shift gears a little bit. You rebranded from AI Senttr to Senttr with a double T recently. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. Was that simply a branding exercise, or did that reflect a broader shift in how you think organizations want to consume AI or something like that?
There was a few things. I'm going to say the majority of it was listening to the customer. That's where it came from. But the the original idea behind AI Senttr was one place where you can manage your AI agents. That was fundamental. There's a
Right.
center of AI for
Gotcha.
a
Yeah,
kind
of
of
course.
management console for AI for your business, fundamentally. And as we started to talk to customers, they'd spend so much time trying to understand what that meant, right? That actually we thought let's remove the AI conundrum, because there's a lot of scaremongering about AI. There are lots of fun stories about my Roomba might take over my living room one day, or there's like AI is going to take over the world fundamentally. So there was lots of scaremongering. There's also a bigger scaremongering, I say, and a bigger worry with customers that AI is going to take my job, right? So what we started to do with customers and say, well, what do you think of us? We just think of us as a platform. So we needed a brand. We didn't want to move too far away from where we started. We still see Senttr as the place you manage your digital workers. Like you might have a HR platform where you manage your workers or your people and your very valuable team. We see Senttr as the place where you manage your very valuable digital workers fundamentally. And then that stopped us having to talk about you need to build an agent into a workflow, into an agentic workflow, into an outcome. We just say you just build a digital worker. It solves a problem for you, a use case for you, a task for you that you really don't want your valuable people to do. So it was a bit of a departure, but fundamentally, the main thing for me is there's. I think you probably saw the same things I saw over the last few years, that there was people were even measuring in stock market earnings calls how many times someone would say AI to push their price up. Right? We need,
Yeah, of
and
course.
fundamentally over a period of time, it just became not important anymore and scaremongering. So we wanted to depart ourselves from the buzz and the hype and fundamentally show how much value that we've got in the platform. So
That's
that's where
really
we started.
wise. I think that's really. I mean, look, I think everyone's talking about AI. It's getting flogged to death now, but I think in 10 years' time, we'll probably stop talking about AI altogether because it'll simply become part of everything in the same way we don't really talk about the internet anymore or IT. I had to ask you about this, Mike. There's a lot of doom mongering going on right now around AI taking everyone's jobs and stuff like that. Where do you sit on this? What does the medium to long term forecast look like, Mike, in terms of jobs and people being replaced by AI technology over the coming years?
Yeah, I think we touched upon a few things on it earlier, and I'm going to give maybe my personal opinion might be somewhat controversial, but it wouldn't be authentic if I didn't give it. So here goes fundamentally. But if there is, and I'll take our focus on grunt work, which is if we think that our employee satisfaction, let's our human satisfaction, if you want to be a good cultural employee, you want to help grow individuals, and you want to help grow and scale your business, be more efficient, gain more market traction, be more successful as an organization, is going to get better by having people type things into systems. I think we have a problem as leaders. I think
Sure.
we do. If we think that fulfills the majority of people, it will fulfill some people, then we do have a problem. So if we cannot bring tools and capabilities to our businesses that reduce the amount of stressful, mundane, repeatable manual work that we've got our people doing, I think we have a problem. We've had these tools for a very long period of time. I think we've been focused on the wrong areas. And I think this is actually what we're seeing, right? If Meta can come out and say, we took 10,000 people out of our business and we thought it would make development faster by using these tools, we're actually going to bring these very talented people back, but we're still going to spend more on the tools. I think that's a very, very good sign that actually we need smart people to do the smart work. We genuinely do. And it works everywhere across all industries for sure, or certainly in most industries. I read a great article this morning, actually, by a friend of mine, Peter Ely, is another from an MSP in the industry. And he wrote this article about someone that would actually been looking at analytics to diagnose disease. I think actually the disease was the individual themselves. And the AI did not diagnose the disease. What it did was the analytics technology could give very clear indications from the data results that allowed a very smart human being to diagnose a disease, right? That's something that we should be doing. Can we speed up the diagnosis process by giving clear data signals by using the right tooling? Absolutely. What does that do? That puts empowerment back on the human, spend the right time doing the right thing. And I think that's where we'll see specifically over the next couple of years, the impact of AI will skyrocket as long as we focus it on the right things. There's many more examples than Meta, I think, in the industry of going the other way. And I think, to your point, I think everybody thought the data center business would disappear when cloud happened. The internet business would destroy so many industries. It created an economy of industries, thousands of industries that have allowed us to grow and scale and build and prosper business on top of it. So for me, we're right at the very beginning of this. I think what we thought AI would do for us, I believe I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I think digital workers will allow us to be impactful and provide an outcome. But I think also we're now starting to understand where we should use AI and its maturity, where we should not use it for some cases because it's dangerous and not the right thing to do. But also thinking about the impact that we need to have in that productivity-based outcome. It's now becoming real, and we're seeing some level of early maturity, but I think it gets better beyond this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what type of jobs do you think are going to be created, Mike? Like if you were advising maybe a young person or someone who's changing careers, maybe to skill up in a specific area because it's inevitably there's going to be more demand for those skills. What skills or job titles do you think would become more prominent over the next couple of years?
There's two that I've been talking about actually this last week, so I'll use them as examples. There's many more. So one is actually I'm very close to my nephew. He's 22 years old, I think now. We talk a bit about how his career is developing. He does a lot in internet coding and SEO over a period of time, but most recently he's now moving to vibe coding, right? And vibe coding is a really interesting thing. So you don't necessarily need to be the best technologies. Still need to be good technologies, but not the best, in order to build a very good SaaS or software as a service type application. But what you do need in front of that is very good consulting skills. You need to understand business problems. You need to be able to solution, and then you need to be able to describe that solution in almost a lean and efficient way to get the best outcome, right? And then you need very good communication skills to be able to work with customers in consulting to build something that might give them the outcome. So I believe what actually the world's been talking about consulting is dead. I don't believe consulting is dead. I just believe it's different now. I believe we'll use tools to do some of the outcomes, but the interaction with solving the business problem will still be very important. So I think that's number one. And vibe coding is something I think we'll all be doing in 10 years' time. I think we'll solve our own problems quite quickly. I think if I talk about number two is actually the ability to let's say manage workload. And I was talking about some level of mature leadership understanding. And that I would say now that the real importance is good leadership coaching, good leadership learning around being able to manage outcomes and productivity. So we're all going to think more like leaders because we'll have digital platforms and digital workers that can actually do the work for us. And we're going to become more of a kind of project manager, productivity task type manager than we were before, than an individual contributor. So if I was starting my career again, I think it would be in either that consulting versus vibe coding piece. So how can I help organizations be more digital? Or how can I help organizations understand how they can become more productive and more agile with their existing resources, or with not having to scale up with too many more resources? And there's another industry that we've probably just created at the same time.
Can I just ask you to elaborate on how you think consulting will evolve over that? You said you think it's going to change. Have you got any more thoughts on that, on how typical IT services, consulting, maybe like in the UK or globally, how do you think it's going to evolve over the next couple of years? Because I think a lot is going to get disrupted, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'll keep the kind of big four, big five consulting to one side because that's a different conversation.
Yeah, of course.
Let's treat, like we talk about IT consulting and the traditional SI, MSP, professional services partner.
Yes.
So what I think is happening there is somewhat we were driven by two things in the past in our industry. I believe so. You usually used to pin your business to a technology stack. That's usually how we worked, right? So I'm a CRM provider and I build CRM systems or integrate them. I'm an integrator in CRM. I do Dynamics, for example, might have been something you did. I do HubSpot and I do the ecosystem of systems around the outside of it. And the same thing would happen. You could be a good GCP partner. You might be a GCP and AWS partner, a Microsoft Azure partner, for example, a VMware partner in the past, if that's what you did. Let's go a bit further, a Compact partner. We can go Sun Microsystems if you go a bit further back, right? So you basically would pin your colors to a technology stack or a technology type, or you'd have a few that could solve your customers' problems.
Yeah, typically, yeah.
I think what that led us to was selling something. And then we ended up in this cycle of we have to sell more of that thing next year because you get the partner of the year and the gold star, and you've wanted to keep progressing as that player in that ecosystem. I think the conundrum for those vendors, and the conundrum also for us that we're in that industry, is now you don't need to do as much as that to give the customer a very good solution. There's a breed of net new technologies, some of them vibe code and some of them like us. To a degree, there's some prompting and vibe coding in our platform that can provide a solution probably 10 times as fast, 10 times as cheap, and with probably a much better outcome for the customer. But we don't have to sell as many days up front of professional services to implement it, and we don't make as much license revenue on the back office. But we have to be customer focused. What is better for the customer? What's better for our business model? And I think that type of consulting will lead to, okay, before we do that, we're actually going to work out more of this strategic consulting. What's your business problem? What structure do you have around your team? How productive are your people? What systems are you using? Where is your data? How secure are you to be able to run the right type of system? And then we don't just say 9 times out of 10, and we're building you the same container in Azure. Actually, what we'll say is, here's a productivity solution that works for you. Here's something that make your business more productive and a better outcome. Don't build a huge data warehouse. Don't build an API bus. Or an API service layer. Let's just build a system that can input the data in the right place and get you to where you need to be. And I think this will be the big change that we see. I've talked about this probably not. I'm not the most popular person to talk about this at channel events and talk about this in the community, but I've talked about it for some time, that we can do a better job for customers with a smaller set of tools that are defined specifically for specific outcomes. We've seen it over time, for sure. We've seen some of the what we've seen happen to VMware, one of my favorite technologies and technology companies that I've ever worked with. Spent a lot of time in my career working with technology stack and some phenomenal people in the industry. What we've seen happen there, and its relevance to most large enterprises to today, is phenomenal. But we know that that's the evolution and the economy of our industry. What we have to do is reinvent ourselves the same way. So for me, that get closer to your customer, understand the business. Don't worry about selling them 30 days of cloud design. Have a look actually about what the business problem is and help them to find a different path to success. And I think that will be the modern MSP. I think what we see in applications living in the cloud, the vibe coding, or at least the ability to build a SaaS app that solves a problem and integrate very fast, will change that economy very quickly. I think we'll see the cloud vendors respond to that quite quickly. I think we're already seeing some of it with some of their integrations to Anthropic, etc. But that will become, I think, the new kind of MSP economy over the next 10 years. That's personally my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's very logical. That's very rational. It sounds, I could certainly see that playing out too. I think that's really interesting. Yeah, it's exciting times, isn't it? When people can create applications like this on demand, and this is inevitably going to have a massive impact on the SaaS world, for instance, isn't it? When companies are able to figure this out. So, Mike, let's finish on this one then. So you've obviously set up and run businesses. You've had senior roles at multiple companies within the IT world. I'm curious to understand, if you were to give your 21-year-old self a bit of advice, knowing what you know now, what would you tell that guy, Mike?
Yeah, there's probably 2 things that I always say, and they contradict each other, but I'm going to say them anyway. And if people ask me kind of when they're getting into leadership, the first one I'd say is listen more. I was so probably determined to be successful that I had my head down too much. So I should have read more and listened more.
Sure.
And probably observed people around me that were successful. I used to network well, but maybe not observe as well, because I maybe was running an autopilot. Somewhat immaturity, and I'll give it to myself. A lot of it was arrogance too, and that's part of growing up, is you have to be able to say those things and own them for sure. I think the second thing is something that I did quite well early and I stopped doing later, which was you have to expect that you can't take no for an answer, and that should be the route to success, because you'll be told no 1,000 times. And so if I was going back to the beginning now, I would certainly understand that. If I was to take those 2 things and say, how would I do them? I would have very much so. If I was going back to genuinely my 21-year-old self, I would have got a leadership coach at that time, because the difference that a leadership coach had on me in understanding people and change management business is phenomenal. I give a shout out to someone called Lucretia. If she watched this, she would definitely know who I'm talking about. She really helped me over the last 10 years, and we still connect very, very occasionally, or too far apart, I think. But if I was going back, I would recommend having someone like that in your life that helps you come to the next level for sure.
Oh, that's a fantastic, very humble, very self-aware. That's a brilliant answer. But Mike, I've really enjoyed this conversation. We've covered everything I wanted to talk about and a lot more as well. So look, thank you so much for spending time with us. I know you're a very busy guy, so we do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Where can people find yourself and Senttr and find out about some of the stuff you guys are doing right now?
Yeah, for sure. I love to connect with other people. I'm also very grateful for you having me on. I've always got time for this type of thing, so thank you for the invite. Senttr.com, so Senttr.com. You can find a bit about digital workers and what we're doing. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Mike Fitzgerald. Super easy. If you do Mike Fitzgerald, then Senttr. I love to connect with people. I'm always interested in connecting with people in the industry and similar events and things around the channel. But yeah, if anybody's listening, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tech Leaders Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you on the next one.